how important is water? Water is fundamental. Water is life. All my clients, all the folks that I deal with know that, because in some ways they're being challenged by the loss of it, the contamination of it. The idea of describing Arizona's water laws in a simple way is not even doable. Arizona has a bifurcated system of water law. Watching rain come down and where it goes and how it works, water is all connected. But Arizona has made a decision in its legal framework to treat surface water, they call it appropriable water, one way under a system of entitlement and vested property rights, and groundwater a totally different way. And of course, having laws that treat things very differently, when we know in fact that they're very much connected, is part of where the challenges come from in all aspects of doing water law, and in Patagonia's case, when you're dealing with mining. So surface water, that is water you see in rivers and streams and things like this, and water that is directly underneath or adjacent to rivers and springs. In other words, you may not see it, but it's called subflow. It is also associated and deemed appropriable water, and that's kind of that middle ground between surface water and groundwater. So under Arizona's doctrine, it's a Western water law concept of first in time, first in right. And what that means is, for folks that have rights, appropriable rights, to a river, let's just take River X. The person who used that river, diverted from that river, and applied that water to a beneficial use at a certain rate, a certain amount, has priority, complete priority, over a person that came later. Groundwater in Arizona is treated differently. So groundwater means that essentially you're sinking groundwater wells. And those can be big wells or little wells. They can be large mining wells. They can be wells based upon mineral extraction permits. They can be groundwater dewatering from a mine, or they can just be a mom and pop well, right? Those are treated under a different standard. But if you're outside an active management area like Patagonia, there is really no protections or restrictions on your groundwater pumping, so long as that whatever you're pumping, you're pulling out of that water, out of the ground, you're not wasting it. So it's kind of just a doctrine of reasonable use. And so what's important to understand there is, you're thinking of this timing element under prior appropriation, under groundwater pumping. If you have a well, and you've had that well, it's a 500-foot well, it's a nice well, it's been producing for years and years and years. You've had that well for 25 years. I move in next door to you, sink a more powerful well, just say I just do that, and I dry your well up, there's nothing you can do about it under Arizona law. It's essentially a right that says, well, you can use that if you can capture that, but if I come in and have a bigger, meaner well and I capture it, too bad on you. So that's the doctrine. It's the wild, wild west. There may be other requirements that a commercial venture would have in terms of what they're doing with the property, other permitting requirements, but in terms of their ability to sink a well and develop that well source, regardless of the impacts, that's pretty unlimited. A mine being conducted on Forest Service lands, fully on Forest Service lands. There would be a National Environmental Policy Act, a NEPA process, where the Forest Service would look at the mining plan of operations. Oh, what's the mine going to look like? How's it going to be built out? How much are they going to be pumping? Where are the wells going to be? What's going to be the mine dewatering process? All of these things. And if it was on federal land, they would have to look at the direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts of all of those processes on adjacent water sources. So in that case, you would probably have some groundwater modeling, and the mining company would be responsible to help fund the studies that were needed to understand holistically what's happening to the adjacent Forest Service lands as a result of this mine, right? When you're on private property, that's a different matter. None of those sort of holistic examinations happen. And so you can have a lack of science. Unless you have the funds to do comprehensive groundwater modeling, how do you examine the mining company's model? And how do you even know what they're saying is accurate or not? That's very, very difficult, layered on top of all the scientific challenges. Smaller communities, your well runs dry, it gets real serious real quick. Up in Mojave County, they're facing challenges from large ag that's coming in and other interests that are pumping some of their historical wells dry. They're worried down in Cochise County similarly. Small communities like Payson, Arizona. Payson has always had a challenge with water. They have limited groundwater supplies.